Very good morning to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I request you to kindly settle down. We will begin the inaugural session now. Thank you. Uh, Once again, I would like to wish Tashi Dele to all of you for taking out your valuable time and coming here and joining with us for this conference on translation of the Sanskrit and Pali literature, Theravada and Mahayana, Series 4. And with this, before I proceed, may I request all of you to kindly turn off your mobile phone, or you can keep it on flight mode so that we do not have any interruption during the session. Thank you. Well, my name is Kunga Chundan. I'm the program coordinator of Tibet House, and I'll be moderating today's inaugural session. Well, on behalf of Tibet House, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I would like to extend our warm welcome to our distinguished chief guest, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, Interim Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University, our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Gishingawa Samdela, and our keynote speaker, Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji from the Pali perspective, and we have Professor Pradeep P. Gogle Ji from the Sanskrit perspective. And I would also like to welcome our director, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah, the director of Tibet House, the culture center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And last but not the least, I would like to welcome all the participants who have come and joined with us today. Now, may I request our honorable chief guest, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Gishingawa Samdela, and Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji, Professor Pradeep Gogle Ji, and Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdullah to kindly light the lamp of eternal wisdom and proceed to the dais. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, before I begin today's conference, which is on translation of the Sanskrit and Pali literature, I would like to briefly introduce you all about Tibet House and its activities. Well, Tibet House, New Delhi, was established in the year 1965 by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama for the purpose of preserving the cultural heritage at the time when it faced forceful challenges in Tibet, as well as for providing a center for Tibetan culture and Buddhist studies. His Holiness the Dalai Lama recurring emphasis on developing a sense of universal harmony and compassion as its own effective antidote to global suffering, together with the needs for a meaningful exchange between different religious and cultural tradition, also had a profound effect on the purpose and its activities of Tibet House. Tibet House aims to bring together Buddhist masters and Tibetologists, people across different disciplines, students and practitioners, and the common man through its various programs and events. Tibet House continues to expand its objective in saving Tibet's heritage and in exploring and working towards Tibet House's potential contribution to the ethical development of the modern society. Over a period of 5 decades since its inception, Tibet House has come to recognize as a significant institution for the dissemination of the Tibetan culture and the Nalanda Buddhist studies. Tibet House is a 5-story facility which has a museum of valuable Tibetan art and artifacts, as well as a library with nearly 5,000 volumes of manuscripts and books, a resource center, a conference hall, a gallery, and a bookshop. Tibet House offers various study programs on Nalanda Buddhist philosophy, conferences on interdisciplinary subjects such as neuroscience and Buddhist psychology, quantum physics, spiritual ecology, and universal ethics. A publication unit which publishes several books a year, and a program division which regularly organizes lectures, seminars, conferences, film screening, and exhibitions. Tibet House also offers 4 different courses on Buddhist philosophy and psychology and a Tibetan language course. Firstly, the first batch of Nalanda Master's course, which was launched on 9th December 2016 on the occasion of 51st anniversary of Tibet House, New Delhi, in the gracious presence of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with Sri Kiran Rijijuji, the Union State Minister of Home Affairs, and Sri Najib Jungji, Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. The first batch of Nalanda Master's course is completed with 372 students from 44 different countries. Second batch of Nalanda Master's course on Nalanda Buddhist philosophy uh, has already started in the in July 2022, in which around 900 participants are enrolled from 54 different countries. Secondly, the Nalanda Diploma course, which was launched on 2018, 4 batches have been successfully completed so far. Nalanda Diploma course, which is a 14-month course. This course is designed specifically to accommodate people who are more seriously interested in Buddhist philosophy while being in the midst of busy schedule with other engagement and commitments. Till now, we have successfully completed with 4 batches, and in fact, we are absolutely delighted to announce the recent launch of the 5th batch of Nalanda Diploma course on the auspicious occasion of Chogur Tijen Festival on 9th July 2024. New registration has begun on 2nd September 2024 and will remain open until 31st October 2024. The course will commence on 2nd October 2024. Thirdly, Tibet House is pleased to announce the successful completion of the second batch of Nalanda certificate course with a total registration of 1,689 participants from 62 different countries. Um, and I would also like to bring your attention on the recent audience and blessing of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, which happened in the year 2023 on 2nd June. Close to 500 students who have recently graduated or from currently studying in the Nalanda Master's course and the Nalanda Diploma course offered by Tibet House, New Delhi, received a gracious audience and blessings from His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and oral transmission of J. Rinpoche's in praise of dependent arising. At present, there are more than 4,000 students from 98 different countries enrolled in courses run by under the leadership of Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula, the director of Tibet House, the cultural center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Tibet House also offers a Tibetan language course on a regular basis. There are 4 levels of learning offered at a very nominal fee with scholarship for students and monastics. Till date, 26 batches has been successfully completed, and we are almost about to complete our 27th batch of the Tibetan language course this year, with a total registration of 161 participants and 70 enrolled for the course. The registration for the 28th batch of the Tibetan language course will soon commence in the month of October 2024. Tibet House also offers a Nalanda Dharma studies on twice a week for Tibetans or non-Tibetans alike who are native speakers or have learned the Tibetan language. At the request of this cohort residing in both India as well as abroad, the weekly public online classes by Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula were continued to introduce them to the basic framework of Buddhist philosophy in a systematic way. The topics that are covered guided the students in a stepwise manner towards a greater understanding of Buddhism and provided a basis for further studies in Buddhist philosophy. As you can see on the PowerPoint presentation, these are the numbers of the Nalanda Master's course, the Nalanda Diploma course, and the Nalanda Certificate course. And the total number of students across all the different countries are 5,816. And I would also like to inform you that we have recently collaborated with the Russian participants as well, who are currently pursuing their Nalanda Dharma studies under the leadership of Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula. Now, coming back to our main event today, on the conference on translation of the Sanskrit and Pali literature, Tibet House, the culture center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, is absolutely delighted to invite all of you for today's conference, Theravada and Mahayana Series 4. And I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to our distinguished chief guest, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, and our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Geshe Ngawa Samdela, Our keynote speaker, Professor Angraj Chaudhary ji, and Professor Pradeep Gokhale ji, and our director, Venerable Geshe Doje Damdula, for taking out your valuable time, keeping its importance, and accepting our invitation for today's conference. Now, on this note, I would now request Venerable Geshe Doje Damdula, the director of Tibet House, the Culture Center of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to kindly come up on the podium and give the welcome address to all of you. Thank you very much.
With my great respect to all the venerables here, and respected Professor Abhay Kumar Singh ji, the chief guest, and the most venerable Geshe Ngawsam Denla, the former Vice Chancellor of Central Institute of Hyderabad Studies, Sarnath, as our honorary guest, and also Professor Angraj Chaudhary ji and Professor Pradeep Gokhale ji. It is indeed a great joy for us that Tibet, as explained by the program coordinator, Mr. Kumar Chandela, about the programs at Tibet House and how this conference is conceived. In fact, I'm extremely grateful to Professor Geshe Ngawsam Denla, the most venerable Geshe Ngawsam Denla, for helping us with identifying the scholars from the different universities with respect to this particular topic. That, of course, some of you may know that I was, or maybe even am, a translator myself, doing literary translations, and also now not much oral translation, more literary translations. But with respect to the Pali translation, Sanskrit translation, I'm totally oblivious of these. I can give just general presentations. Besides this, it's a very specialized topic, and we sought the help of the most venerable Geshe the Ngawsam Denla, and who's also a part of Tibet House at the teaching program. We requested him to teach the first 5 chapters of Acharya Chandrakriti's text to the students who Kungala clearly indicated. There are about like over 2,000 students doing the Narendra Master's course from Tibet House. And I'm here, first of all, to welcome you all to this very specialized conference with a specialized topic. And in this connection, it is a random thought that came to me that I remember when I was in the 9th class, meaning that I must be age 14 or 15. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all along all these many years, when His Holiness was in his 40s, 50s, on the school, TCV school, Tibetan Children's Film School Professor Balugarji, you're aware of him? You're aware of the school where I was graduated from. Every year during the school anniversary, His Holiness, the school would always invite His Holiness as the chief guest, and His Holiness to bless not only the school, but everybody. TCV school is a huge campus, and everybody from Dharamsala would just flock in, not for the anniversary, but to have the glimpse of His Holiness's blessings. So this is how everybody's attracted. They know TCV school so well, all because of His Holiness's presence there. And I remember as a little boy, every time we had to do the performance on the football ground in the presence of His Holiness, and then we had to wait there under the scorching sun. And His Holiness, extremely kind, he was rushed through all the exhibitions to make sure that the children waiting on the ground, they are not burnt alive under the scorching sun. That's amazing, so kind. Would just rush to get to the place as soon as possible, so the students, they don't have to sit there for too long under the sun. And I remember, particularly when I was in class 9, His Holiness, again, amazingly visionary leader. This is the kind of leadership that we require. His Holiness said that Tibetans, since we came in exile till today, we focused on the students, number 1, the food and the stay, good health. Number 2, education. We focused on the students, Tibetan children's education. Now, we have reached to the point where all the Tibetan children, they got education. Now we should not feel complacent that we are all getting education. Now we should go for the professionalism, specializations. Wow, it just hit my mind when I was just class 9. And I was so fond of physics and mathematics. And I was thinking of becoming a physicist. And it hit me so hard. And today, after almost 40 years, now I'm standing here organizing this conference, translations in Sanskrit, in Pali language of the Buddhist, the canonical texts. So here, the relevance that I see between the two is that we really need to prove that we are a civilization. We are not a barbaric humanity. We are a civilization. And civilization is marked not by what kind of food that you're eating, what kind of level of the development of your thought process. That is marked by that thought process. And if the thought process is so low, it's not a civilization. Today, unfortunately, we see that the world is governed by the physical might, not by the might of the mind. This is very unfortunate. Where the physical might dominates over the might of the mind, this is uncivilized. This is still barbarism. So today in the world, where the economy is very strong, you can bully the rest of the world. This is the world today. Unfortunately, this is still not civilization. We may come in the boot, suit, and so forth, with luxurious food and so forth. This is not civilization. It is still barbarism. So what is civilization? It is marked by the sophistication of your thought process. And the sophistication of thought process is not just like, say, the Lord Mahavir came, or Ram came, or Prophet Muhammad came, or Buddha came, and then taught something, and that is ultimate. No, this is not the meaning of the sophistication thought process. This is contributions of incredibly brilliant enlightened masters. But the civilization is not just one person. It's a group of the people of the nation, group of the people of the world. So with this in mind, for example, Albert Einstein, he left incredibly great legacies. Physically, of course, when he was in his 20s, he was very smart. But in his late 60s, 70s, he was physically not so appealing. But brilliance, that is very appealing. That is a mark of the civilization of the world. So likewise, we have Mahatma Gandhi. Again, a brilliant, one individual person. Just look at the physical appearance. So fragile, but mind extremely strong, extremely visionary, who is the father of the nation, India. So these are the legacies, if we can contain, if we can carry forward, that's the meaning of civilization. So in this regard, for example, like as for the translation thing, what is translation? Translation of what? Translation of the rich, sophisticated cognitive thought processes and the effective mental processes. Translation, these materials composed, taught about by the past masters from the different parts of the world. And in India is one of the greatest countries which produce so many brilliant thinkers. So our job is to make sure that these materials So, for example, here in India, if possible, we think of the world. These legacies that Indian great past masters they produce, they are not only the legacies of the India, but these are the treasures of the world. And if you cannot think of that far, that broad, that wide world, think of the nation, is the pride of the nation. But we should make sure that these materials, if not developed further, cannot be adulterated. For that matter, the translations, the quality of translations, that is extremely important. And of my personal experience of the translation works since age 30, 34, 35, since I became the translator of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then involved in written translations also. And I can see that today, looking back in time, like 20 years ago, the translation which I had been doing, they're extremely gross. And I can see that there are so many sophistications involved in the translation. So with this in mind, what I'm saying is that at least if you cannot be of service to the world, at least be of service to the nation. And how to see that, particularly being in the academic world, how can we be of service to the nation, if not to the world, is to make sure that you make contributions to prove that this nation is a civilizational nation. This is not a barbaric nation. How? Civilization meaning, as I said earlier, it is marked by the sophistication of the degree of the sophistication of the thought processes. So these are all reflected in the literary works, written works, the libraries. And who's going to judge that you are a civilization or not? That what you are in is a civilization or still a barbarism? It will be determined by 2 points. One, brilliant thinkers of the people in other parts of the world. Today, PRC is trying to gain the ownership of Buddhism, saying that Buddhism is PRC's property. Okay, trying to lure others by giving money, organizing big conferences and so forth. This is not to prove that this is civilization. This is still barbarism. It's fooling others. But what is a civilization? It's marked by you don't have to pay. People will judge you. People will mark you. People will grade you. Great thinkers will grade you. For example, like in the past, the great thinkers like, the great thinkers and physicists like Albert Einstein, and today, like Professor Anton Zelenga, Nobel laureate. These people will judge you. They'll grade you. We cannot be in a cocoon, in a ghetto, that we are doing great. Perhaps we are fooling ourselves. So we have to create a quality translation. This is so important. And how to mark the quality translation? It is not that I, as a translator, I do it myself and this quality translation. No, it must be seen by various translators all over the world. And they have their own sophistications of the translation methods. So they will grade you, your quality. Whereas, for example, one thing that I say is that for example, Nalanda, a brilliant place where millions of manuscripts were burned. Luckily, a part of which is still today's people can have access to. What are these manuscripts? These manuscripts are the ones which were taken to Tibet. In India, burned fully. And from Tibet, they brought back to India. So the whole world can have access to this. They come to India to get access to these materials. It's because of the translations and the authenticity of the translations, the sophistication of the translations, the translational methods adopted, methodology adopted in Tibet under the auspices and the advice of the Indian master, Bodhisattva Shantarakshita, commissioned by the Tibetan emperor, King Trisong Dzin. So this gave a quality to the translation. So, and today I was so amazed and I deeply felt so proud. One day I was in Pune University for a conference and I met the Sanskritist, one of the renowned Sanskritists. And during our casual talk, I did not say anything about translation. And he said that we lost a great materials in Sanskrit. But he said that with respect to Sanskrit, I'm not really worried too much. He's a Sanskritist himself. I'm not worried as much. I said, why? Because Sanskrit, even if we don't have the materials in Sanskrit, we have the materials in Tibetan. We can bring them back, reconstruct them in Sanskrit, and you get the quality the Sanskrit materials back from Tibetan. And the Tibetans did a great job in the past, 8th century AD, 1,200 years ago. This was the work Tibetans did under the great auspice and the direction of the Indian master, Bodhisattva Shantarakshita, who himself was an incredibly brilliant philosopher, logician, and the epistemologist. So this is one mark how we can judge, how we can evaluate the civilization by the other thinkers from worldwide. They will judge you. If we remain in cocoon, thinking that what we can do anything, like what Pirasi was trying to adulterate the history, and other people will laugh at you. Number two, if you truly feel to be of service to the nation, to the world, second mark of the success of what you're doing, contributing to the civilization of the world and the nation, is that the future generations should feel proud of you. What you do today, future generations, they're for sure going to be more mature, more civilized. They will read your works of 2024 and they see that this is a big embarrassment to our nation. If that happens, this is our failure. So today, we should think of these two things, where brilliant minds all over the world, they should respect what we're doing in terms of translations and so forth, maintain the authenticity, and the sophistication of authenticity is also there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe Dorje Damdula. Now I would like to request our director once again to kindly offer the white scarf and the souvenir as a token of our appreciation and gratitude to our chief guest, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Geshe Samdila, and our keynote speakers, Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji and Professor Pradeep Gokhale Ji. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest for today's conference, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji. Now we have our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Geshe Samdila. And then we have our keynote speaker from the Pali perspective, Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji. Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji. And now we have Professor Pradeep Gokhleji from Sanskrit Perspective. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Venerable Gishula. And now I would like to request our chief guest for today's conference, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, to kindly give the welcome note. And before that, I would like to give you a brief introduction about him. Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University, he was born in the year 1960, received his education in MJP Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, and obtained PhD in Ancient History and Culture. He studied a course in Greek language and civilization in the University of Patras, Greece, presently as interim Vice Chancellor Nalanda University, Rajgir, where he has been serving as Dean of the School of Historical Studies and Dean of International Relations. During 2018 to 2021, he completed a diplomatic assignment in Embassy of India in Iran as founding director, Indian Culture Center, and established the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Tehran. In his earlier service at the MJP Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, he held the position of head of the Department of Ancient History and Culture and Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Advanced Social Science. In that tenure, he established the Indo-Iranian Studies Center. He also developed an archaeological museum, Panchala Museum, through a Center of Excellence Award. He also served as professor of ancient history in the Northeastern Hill University, Nehu, Shillong in 2004. Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji was awarded the World Prize for the Book of the Year of the Islamic Republic of Iran 2006 by the President of Iran for his contributions, and later a felicitation with a citation plaque by the Vice President of Iran in the year 2008. He was invited to participate in the prestigious UNESCO colloquium on Afghanistan, meeting point between East and West, in Montpellier, France, in 2003. He has presided in international and national conferences and presented his researches in India, Greece, and Iran, having more than 75 presentations. He was awarded two Best Paper Prizes in prestigious national conferences. His research pertains to ancient India context with Persian, Greco-Bactrians, Sakas, and Kushanas, and the subsequent social, religious, economic, cultural, and artistic effects in history. He has published about 50 research papers, authored one book, co-edited 8 books, and produced 3 museum publications. 13 scholars have obtained PhD degrees under his supervision. He is on the editorial boards of the Research Journal and is a member of Academic Association. Now, without further ado, I would like to request our chief guest, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, to kindly address the gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him. Thank you.
Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdor, Director, Tibet House. Venerable Padma Shri Professor Geshe Dwang Samten. Respected Professor Angaraj Chaudhary. Respected Professor Pradeep Gokhale. My respected colleagues here, Professor Siddharth Singh, Professor Baholkar, Professor Rao, Professor Das, and all dear audience. I heartily thank the esteemed organizers of the conference for the invitation sent to me to participate here. I bring to you the goodwill and good wishes of the Nalanda University and also invite you to visit the new campus of Nalanda University, which was recently inaugurated by Honorable Prime Minister. The connection of scholars of the Buddha Dharma with Nalanda has been since ages strong, and I see this connection equally important, and in this way it is a natural part of what the present conference proposes to deliberate. We need authentic interpretations and translations of the Sanskrit and Pali texts, and that was once a major activity of the scholars who studied at ancient Nalanda. That should be continued. For the sake of the authentic interpretation and translation, we need our scholars to engage more, and what best could be than Nalanda. So I offer to you this invitation, and hopefully you would be gracious enough to accept this. Recently, the idea of Buddhism is gaining ground. Buddhist philosophy has the intrinsic idea that can remedy the ills of our society, of our civilization. Beautifully said by Venerable Geshe that to be civilized is something to be what we are not today, despite the material progress. The whole idea that we hold in the ethics, in the philosophy of Buddhism, is the remedy for all the problems that humanity has faced, the ills that have been in civilization for ages. We need peace more today than it could have been in the past, because conflict has reached the farthest points and the deepest gravity that world had ever seen. Existence has come almost at a point of about to vanish, and those who exist also have nothing of content left in their lives. Only a thorough study of the Buddhist text and the right, correct interpretation would lead us to the right path. I am no scholar of Buddhist philosophy, but being a student of history, I am familiar with the amount of the false ideas and misinterpretations that circulate in the sphere of knowledge due to the poor and wrong translations of the original works. The entire history of India needs a combing effort and a scanning of the sources, and the originals need to be researched well. All the more important is that the scholars of this eastern part of the world should be involved in the revisit of the text and the original manuscripts. As I follow this line, recently I came across some good activity that is happening in the field of scrutinizing the translations of the Pali text by scholars from the eastern part of this globe, and who have also pointed out the discrepancies, shortcomings, errors, and in the translations that have held sway for years and decades. Of course, I know that most of the distinguished professors and educationists and scholars here are doing a lot of good translation in the right, giving it the right meaning. I have surveyed some parts which have come from different countries in the Southeast Asia. It may not be complete because, as I said, I am not a scholar of this. But in history, we look to different sources and through which I have come to know about it. So firstly, I may mention a scholar from Taiwan, Kuan Se Fu. And I read in one of the papers, rightly pointed out that the four main Nikayas were translated twice in completeness. The first was by F.L. Woodward and E.M. Hare from the Pali Text Society, done in 1932 and 1936. This is in 5 volumes, the Book of Gradual Sayings. And the second task was taken up and completed in 2012 by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and it is known as the Numerical Discourses of the Buddha, a translation of the Anguttara Nikaya that was published from Boston. Bhikkhu Bodhi, and with his another publication that is in 2000, has translated the Samyutta Nikaya, and I see that there were 2 or 3 more of his publications in the recent past. Kuan Se Fu has discussed that there has been also translations taking the support of the literary conventions and the commentarial traditions, that is the Atthakatha by Buddha Ghosh, just like that, and the importance of Sanskrit and Chinese parallels have been taken as the alternative solutions while translating. You as a scholars would be knowing how much this would be contributing, but then it was in 2006 when Huang Sunil, whom I happen to know, has suggested that there are also big risks, and he cited about Buddha Ghosha's particularly the interpretation of Nibbana or Nirvana has been somewhere not that faithfully taken up by Buddha Ghosha. So Sanskrit context of the commentaries do not be fully relied upon, because with the passage of times and particularly the development of the different ideas in schools in Buddhism also, somewhere the original meaning might be modified. I also went to the contributions by the scholars in Sri Lanka. The first one, of course, to me, who appeared is the recent ones, as I'm saying, is D.J. Kalupahana. And he has, in the Buddha's philosophy of language, pointed out that Lord Buddha adopted a language of becoming, avoiding the language of existence. And he steered through the substantialist and the nihilist implications. Now, this appealed to me, to my mind, because it is the language of the dependent arising, the praticya samupad, that he steered clear of the extremes of permanent existence, that is the Śāstra, and the nihilistic non-existence, that is the Uchchedavad. So translating Pali text should not lose the philosophical vision that Buddha had wished to convey, and the complex etymological structure of the terms should be kept in mind. Another scholar who has lived earlier in 1949 had published is Professor K.N. Jayatilaka, and in his interpretations, he says the problems of translations and interpretations, to which he gave some guiding attention, the aspects of conveying the spirit of the original and the problem of historical distance and the scientific or emotive use of language that have played much part in the translations. Understanding the individual words of a sentence, I'm quoting from Professor Jay Tilaka, that understanding the individual word of a sentence is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for understanding a sentence. So, individual word, understanding of the individual word of a sentence is necessary, but it is not sufficient condition for understanding the whole sentence. And he cited this chakkam vateti, may mean turning of the wheel, but this is an idiomatic meaning, would be extending sway or exercising authority. So the doctrinal contexts are necessary, and this has again a great relevance in the translation. Further to this, reading from different sources, the key terms in Buddha, such as the Tathagat, the Dhamma, Nibbana, Kam, or Karm, hold meanings that are almost vast, complex concepts. It is not possible always to find a synonym, a parallel word in another language. Therefore, many words are left out as untranslatable. It is better to do so rather than to misinterpret. And again, I came across another example that in recent 1986, in a book, Divine Revelation in the Pali Buddhism by Peter Masefield, the words like Shavak, Satopan, Parto Ghosha as implying some kind of a superhuman revelation. And this is a construed concept which is alien to Buddhism, where any revelation as a means of knowledge has been rejected. So translation need to know the richness of the concepts that existed in the original language. Another scholar is Min Berm Jin, who has in a paper Problems of Translating Canonical Pali to Other Languages, has pointed out that extensive uses of prefixes in combination with verbal roots in Pali language expresses subtle distinctions in meaning. And this was interesting when the scholar has pointed out that the prefixes like sam, vi, pari, abhi have given much change to the idea. Like vijanati and pajanati may translate in English as to know, but both activities involve a kind of knowing and the mode of knowing, which in each case is different. In 2019, a scholar from Vietnam, Nguyen Minh Trang, has given a wonderful suggestion in a paper known as The Hands on Experience in Translating Buddhist Texts, and where he's concluded that he's reiterating the 7 principles designed by the Buddhist Text Translation Society as the best guidance for their consensus, accuracy, understandable, and many interpretations being part of this. Now, lastly, as I conclude, I would say that who are we given the sanction to translate? Of course, I am referring to the incident of the 2 monks asking Lord Buddha himself, should they be translating his words into chandas? And all the gathering knows about it. And as I would go to the historian, Vimalcharan Law, who finally argues and finally says that Buddha accepted and he did not oppose any sort of a translation. And coming back to what Venerable Geshe says, if there were no translations, I think we would have lost a lot of wealth of knowledge, and also the right way, the right path would not have been before us even to discover now. We at Nalanda, we understand the value of all that has burned down and it has been retrieved from the Tibetan source. So I wish that this conference and of course I know that all the delegates who are pondering on this question would come up with some very fine ideas about the translation. So with all my good wishes and thanks again to the Honorable Tibet House and the organizers for giving us this chance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh ji. Now, I would like to give you a brief introduction about our next speaker, Venerable Professor Gishing Samdila. Venerable Professor Gishing Samdila obtained his master's degree from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi, and subsequently the Geshe Lharampa degree, the highest Tibetan traditional degree equivalent to PhD, from Gandhi Monastic University, India. He worked as associate professor in the research department and later as a professor in the Department of Buddhist Philosophy in the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies. Thereafter, since 2001, he served as the director and vice chancellor in the same institute for over 20 years. He served as visiting professor at Amherst College, Smith College, and Hampshire College, United States of America, University of Tasmania, Australia, and IIHTS, Austria. He served as an active member in various important committees of the Central Tibetan Administration, Dharamshala, various ministries of the Indian government, Indian national academic bodies, and Indian and foreign universities. He has critically edited and translated a number of classical works of Indian and Tibetan masters. He has contributed articles to special publication and books. He widely lectured at various important forums and universities in the United States of America, Europe, Australia, Taiwan, Thailand, Russia, Korea, and India. He was honored with Padma Shri, one of the highest Indian civilian national awards, by the President of India in recognition of his contribution to education and literature in 2009. He was honored with Vesak Samman in 2016 by the Government of India in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the preservation, development, and promotion of Indian philosophy, arts, and culture within and outside India, as well as his lifelong achievement in the services towards disseminating Buddhist studies and establishing academic institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Gishing Samdila.
Respected Professor Abhay Kumar Singh ji, Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdula, and Professor Angaraj Chaudhary ji and Professor Pradeep Gokhale ji, and distinguished scholars and friends. Today's topic is a translation of Pali and Sanskrit, and I think this is a very important topic because translation plays a very, very significant contribution role in course of bringing the whole civilization. Any kind of text or tradition is brought into other language or other community through translations. And the quality of translation decides the depth and height of the civilization and knowledge system that is being brought into another community or another language. So every text has three layers. One is the body of the text, another is the knowledge of the text, And the third level, or the highest and the deepest, subtlest level, is the spirit of the text. So in order to reach to because that is the core for which purpose the texts are being translated, we need to have the proper communication, transmission of the spirit of the text. And in order to reach to the spirit of the text, we need a proper knowledge of the text. And in order to reach to the proper knowledge of the text, we need to have an accurate, authentic body of the text. So these three needs to be taken into account. If we lose saying that the spirit is the most important and translation may be roughly done, that is going to destroy the whole purpose of the project. So therefore, to give an example of the Tibetan translation, rules were formulated, and in order to bring authentic translation into Tibetan language, there were certain rules and regulations formulated at the time, which is again a great kind of visionary idea, and how the whole transaction, whole enterprise of translation was taking place to maintain these things. For example, if we translate the two, take for example the Mul Madhyamika Karika or Pramanavartika, the two toughest kind of texts. If we take these since these are taken as a very authentically done, literally, thematically, I won't go into the details because we don't have time, and the body was not just sufficient. It was done significantly authentically, and then the knowledge was received from the Indian masters, which transmitted from India to Tibet in a holistic manner, in a very with the depth. And that is how the knowledge of the Mul Madhyamika Karika, based on authentic body of the text, came into Tibet. But that does not serve unless the very spirit of the text, the spiritual practice of the text, through the understanding of the knowledge of the text, is not there. So these, with the help of the previous two levels, the spirituality can be obtained. Otherwise, how can one obtain the spirituality or the spirit of the text? And for example, the another text, Pramanavartika, is a very tough, and Pramana Samuchaya and Pramanavartika, these are very tough texts. And again, taking into account the subtleties of the the content of the text, and also the literal aspect of the text, each word, each sentence, each word has its own meaning, sophisticated meaning, which carries a whole volume of content. These were taken into account and explained, and the knowledge, again, along with the text, the knowledge got transferred, and with that the epistemological, with the cognitive systems and the logic system, they were brought, because the very purpose of the logic, epistemology, and these are to understand the philosophy and and attain realization. And for that purpose, the whole process was maintained to reach to that level. So therefore, translation is the most important when any kind of knowledge or system is translated or transmitted into other language or other civilization, brought into other civilization. Therefore, the modern translations, and now since we are talking about Sanskrit and Pali, from Sanskrit into other languages, and now there is a need of translating into Sanskrit from other sources. For example, the Tibetan, from Tibetan to Sanskrit, because we have lost many of the important treatises in their original language, and these are now, for example, many of the scholars have done earlier, before 1960s, in other other countries, European and Japanese scholars have done, But then after 1980s, the Tibetan Institute of Varanasi has taken up this project as a major kind of project of the institute, restoring the lost Sanskrit text into Sanskrit from the from Tibetan sources. Again, I won't go into that in depth, because it itself is a major kind of journey. And so from Tibetan into Sanskrit is more possible, and works well, because the translation from Sanskrit into Tibetan was, as I mentioned earlier, taking into account all the details of the the body of the text, the content of the text altogether, both thematic and literal, the content of the text. So therefore, when we translate, retranslate, or restore the text back into Sanskrit, then it fits very well, and also it is quite authentic, in the sense that one of our, when we find after the restoration is done and published, thereafter sometimes we find the original pieces, fractions of the text somewhere else, or sometimes a part of the text elsewhere. So after that, we get the opportunity to juxtapose this, the restored version and the original version. And in certain cases, we have, like for example, in Mul Madhyamika Avatara, the very the homage verse was translated earlier by our colleague, and it was almost 90% correct, precisely correct. And the 10% was because we chose two words in place of the other words, but the meaning was the same, but we chose the term differently. And then from the syntactical and from the meter point of view, everything was exact. So this is kind of the exactitude that we we can do while translating from restoring from Tibetan into Sanskrit. So my time is running short. So with this, what I wanted to give a message on this occasion, that there are many translations now being done at the global level into so many other languages. So therefore, sometimes people have, this is a modern area and there should be a kind of free kind of should be a kind of freedom in translating whatever manner the translator wants. Certainly that's right to some extent, but can we transmit the three levels in the right manner? These are the parameters of the authenticity of translation. So therefore, when we are doing translation, then these three must be kept in mind. Otherwise, if we don't fit into that parameters, then I think that the translation would not be able to transmit the knowledge and the content of the text, which is a great loss in the course of transmission. So I will stop here, because I have completed my time. Thank you very much for inviting me and organizing this kind of conference. This is a part of a single kind of unit of the activities that Tibet House has been doing with the leadership of Geshe Dorje Damdula. And as you have heard in the beginning, that so many activities are being done here with the very limited resources. So I congratulate Geshe Dorje Damdula and his wonderful team for accomplishing this, this kind of mega programs, which expands throughout the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Professor Geshe Samdela, for your motivational words, and for sharing us your knowledge and wisdom on the very topic of the conference, translation of Sanskrit and Pali literature, and at the same time for inspiring us with your wonderful words. Thank you. And now, before I move on, I would like to inform all of you that our second guest of honor for today's conference, Ms. Amita Prasad Sarbaiji, she is not able to join today as she has some health issues. So because of that, she won't be able to join with us today. And now I would like to give you a brief introduction about Professor Angraj Chaudhary, former professor of Nalanda Mahavira University, Bihar. Professor Angraj Chaudhary was a professor at Nalanda Mahavira Nalanda, where he taught English and Pali literature. There he did research work on comparative aesthetics, East and West, for his D.Litt degree from Patna University. He also edited some Pali Atthakatha such as Suttanipata Atthakatha in 2 volumes, Theravada Atthakatha in 2 volumes, and Therigata Atthakatha written by Buddhaghosa and Dhammapala about 1600 years ago for the first time in Devanagari script. He was awarded the Certificate of Honor in Pali by the President of India in the year 2011. After he retired from the government of Bihar Education Service, he joined Vipassana Research Institute, Dhammagiri, Igatpuri, Nashik, established by Vipassana Karya Satya Narayan Goenka. Goenka ji had told him in 1973, when he had sat the first Vipassana course with him, that he might need his services after his retirement. He retired in December 1992. Within 3 months of his retirement, Goenka ji sent him a message to join VRI Dhammagiri, which he was very happy to join. He continued to do the same kind of work he used to do at Nalanda. The work includes teaching Pali literature, editing Pali literature, both canonical and non-canonical, and translating some of the Atthakathas into Hindi. He was one of the editors who edited in Pali Tipitaka with his Atthakathas, Tikas, and Anutikas in Devanagari script in 140 volumes, for the first time, a Himalayan task never undertaken anywhere in India before. He also translated some Pali Atthakathas written 1600 years ago but not translated into Hindi or English so far. The Hindi translation of Sutta Nipata Atthakatha in 2 volumes has been published. The Hindi translation of Theravada Atthakatha in 2 volumes has been sent to the press, and the work on the Hindi translation of Therigata Atthakatha has just been completed. His publication include comparative aesthetics, East and West, essays on Buddhism and Pali literature, aspects of Buddha Dhamma, Buddha life and teachings, Telakahatagata with its Hindi and English translation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Angraj Chaudhary, our keynote speaker from the Pali perspective. Thank you.
Most Venerable Gese Dorje Damdul, Director of Tibet House, Most Venerable Gese Nawang Samten, former Vice Chancellor, respected Professor Abhay Kumar Singh, Vice Chancellor, Nalanda University, Professor Bahulkar, Professor Gokhale ji, Siddharth, Ujjwal Kumar, and most of you I don't know, so I can't name them. First of all, let me thank you that I have been invited here to talk about the difficulties that one faces while translating from Pali into Hindi. I have done that for quite some time, and I have collected some points here. I wanted the organizer to give a copy to each one of you so that you can read my long paper and read and react also. I don't say that I have done it perfectly, but I have tried my best to translate it and, and find out some difficulties that one faces while translating from Pali into Hindi. Because this Pali literature is a great literature and a literature which is by itself. I have studied English literature, Hindi literature, French literature in translation, German literature, Russian literature, but I do not find any literature in the whole world which can compare with Pali literature. Because this is a literature which is not born out of imagination. It is not Kalpana Prasut, but this is a literature which is born out of bhavana, pragyamayi bhavana. Because the Buddha talks of three kinds of pragya: Srutmayi pragya, Chintanmayi pragya, and Bhavnamayi pragya. So when I studied Pali language, I got a first class in 35 days also. Just I read Pali for 35 days and I got a first class. But I couldn't understand its essence of it. When I sat a Vipassana course for 10 days, then I could realize, personal experience I had, that how mind is fickle. This fickleness of mind you cannot understand unless you practice Vipassana and unless you realize it yourself. Fandanang chapalang chittang durakhang dunnivarayang ujum karoti medhavi usukaro vatejanam. This I learnt it by heart, wrote it in the examination, got very good marks. In 35 days I got a first class. But then when I did a Vipassana course, then I could realize what is the meaning of this Fandanang Chapalang Chittang. And I said to Goenkaji, I didn't know the meaning of these words. And there are many terms here. For example, Sati and Sampajanya. You cannot understand Sati and Sampajanya without practicing Vipassana. So in the beginning, I tell you, whoever wants to translate from Pali to Hindi literature must have some experience of Vipassana. Then only you will be able to do justice to translation. Otherwise, it is very difficult to translate. Sati means what? Many people say Sati is Smriti, memory. It's not like that. Sati means to live in the present. To live in the present. And you see how difficult it is to live in the present. You try yourself and you see that your mind goes away. Goes mind away. You are now here, I am in England. You are here, you are in England. Immediately, within a flash, you can go anywhere. Sati means to keep your mind engaged, to keep your mind fixed to a particular thing. That is why. So I say, this is my experience, that this literature is born out of bhavana, is not out of kalpana. It's not kalpana prasut, but it is pragya prasut. Pragya means to have experience, pratyaksha gyan jisko kehte hain. So, while translating, I have collected some points here. Let me tell you some points that are difficult to do it. And before, I think I should not give a lecture now. I should read out the points because the time is short also. I don't know how much time I'll get. So as I said, how can one understand clearly the meaning of Vedana Pachaya Tanha? Vedana Pachaya Tanha you cannot understand unless you know how your mind works and unless you practice Vipassana. So I request anybody who is engaged in translating Pali literature into Hindi literature, he must have some experience of Vipassana. Then only he will be able to go the right way, otherwise it will be very difficult. I have shown in an article entitled Patisamupad explained in the light of Vipassana that this law of dependent origination cannot be understood without practicing Vipassana. The veracity of Euclid's geometrical laws and Newton's laws of gravitation can be experimented in any outside laboratory and by any intelligent person. But the law of dependent origination can be experimented and verified in this fathom-long body by a person who is free from defilements. And this can be, and he can be free from them by observing the precepts of morality, then only he will be able to concentrate his mind. There is one more word, bhavana. Bhavana means to what? To do it again and again, again and again. To do it again and again. This is called bhavana. A very important word here. Practicing vipassana, one can understand the meaning of words like janati, sanjanati, vijanati, pajanati, parijanati, and abhijanati. These are the words you get in the first sutta of Madhyama Nikaya, Mula Pariyaya Sutta. Now, very difficult to translate janati, vijanati, sanjanati, pajanati. How will you translate? I have given some points here. I have myself done it, and if people agree, and I think one should agree also that we can translate it in some way by giving what is called prefixes. So let us find out whether these words are there in Buddhist Sanskrit dictionary first. So if these words are there in Buddhist Sanskrit dictionary, it's all right. But I have tried. In Edgarden's Buddhist dictionary, you don't find these words. No word is given. So how to translate janati, vijanati, sanjanati, pajanati, parijanati, abhijanati? And you know, this is janati, the krama. As you go from Sheikh to Buddha, different kind of knowledge is there. How can you measure this knowledge? And every knowledge cannot be given word. So here something has been given to you that an ordinary man only knows, janati, but the Buddha abhijanati, sanjanati. So you know the dimension of knowledge from janati to abhijanati, and there is something in between. So you have to find out the words while translating Mula Pariyaya Sutta. Pali literature, both the Tipitaka and Allied, is a special kind of literature, and most of the words are used in Abhidha, not in Lakshana and Vyanjana. That is the important thing. In imaginative literature, you find the use of Lakshana and Vyanjana, but here you find the use only of Abhidha. But in Pali literature, this is not the case. Here, words which are almost technical and scientific and which have precise meanings are used, and they have the same connotation wherever they are used. Technical terms and scientific words cannot be used nebulously. There is one-to-one relationship between a technical term or scientific word and its meaning. This is the case with most of the words used in Pali literature, a literature where the study of psychology, ethics, philosophy, and religion is happily combined. The vast body of Pali literature contains the teachings of the Buddha and some of the enlightened disciples. The teachings of the Buddha are concerned with four noble truths such as suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Now, everywhere you find technical terms there, so you have to know its exact meaning. Technical terms used in Pali have precise meanings. If for each Pali term a suitable Hindi word is found out, much of our task of translating from Pali into Hindi will be done. Let us say Parittichitta. You find Parittichitta. Parittichitta has been translated as Praviktichitta. That means small consciousness. And Sankhiptichitta is concentrated mind. It's Sankhiptichitta. Vikshiptichitta is Vikshiptichitta. Odan is clear, Devadan, and Sankiles is Sankiles in Hindi. Then our task would be to replace Pali terms with Hindi words. So one of our primary tasks would be to replace all or most of Pali words with those words in Hindi which can fully convey the meaning Pali words can do. Of course, there is no one-to-one relation between words and their referents all the time. What I mean is that all Pali words are not technical. There are exceptions to this end. These are significant exceptions. Take, for example, the word kuti. Kuti is channa kuti, bivata kuti. You find in one of the suttas. Now, in the Dhaniya Sutta and the words kasi in the Kasi Bharadwaj Sutta or the Brahmabandhu in the verses of some Theras in the Theragatha, these words are used in different senses, but they have meanings only on two planes, material and spiritual. Whereas kuti means cottage or hut made of bamboo and grass for dhaniya, it means Buddha's own self. Everybody makes a kuti for himself or herself by virtue of his or her wholesome and unwholesome actions. Kasi means agriculture for Kasi Bharadwaj, from which he gets grain to eat and alleviate his hunger. But the Buddha's Kasi means developing seal, samadhi, and panya, which when developed results into Nibbana, the fruit that the Buddha's Kasi produces. This Kasi completely alleviates hunger, whereas Bharadwaj's Kasi cannot. One meaning of Brahmabandhu is a Brahmin by birth, but the other meaning attains on a spiritual plane where man becomes a real Brahmin by cultivating all the qualities of a Brahman. Let me see. Oh, only 3 minutes are left. Now that's what I told you in the beginning, that it's very difficult. You have to get a paper and read it for yourself. And I won't take Professor his time now because he has to also give a keynote address. Let me, in 3 minutes, I do something more. There are some words in Pali and Hindi which mean the same thing, although they are different, spelled differently, because Pali has only dental and not palatal saw. Kusal, akusal, dos, saka, etc. There are some words both in Pali and Hindi which are spelled alike, but their meanings are different. Like akhil in Hindi means whole, but akhil in Pali means without khila, that is without raga, dosa, and moha. Then lean in Pali means clinging, sticking. Lean chitta means one who has cravings. But in Hindi it means absorbed. Padhne mein leen, Brahma mein leen. So you find these differences. Speakers of Hindi have to guard themselves against translating Pali words analogically because Dhamma is Dharma, Kamma is Karma. So Mahapradesh should not be translated as Mahapradesh because that means something else. Mano as niche prakriti, but Hindi words given here for Pali words do not convey what Pali words stand for. Whereas Mahapradesh is chief criterion, Baswati is powerful, niche mano means being low and humble, as we find exampled in he that is low needs fear no fall. In the Amagandha Sutta also, Nich Mano Bandhi Tathagatasya means he is being polite. Nich Mano means being polite. So while revising the Hindi translation of the Anguttara Nikaya, Venerable Anand Kausalyan came across 3 words in Asa Sutta. They are Niras, Asavan and Purnas. Although Brihat Hindi Shabdkosh gives 2 meanings of Niras, such as जिसकी आशा पूरी नहीं हुई हो उसको बोलते हैं आशा रहित. But there are some persons who don't have any hope in life. So for that I have coined a word, sunyas. I have coined this word, sunyas. It looks good and I think it will go on. Atur and usuk also are other such words. They have got nothing to do with the Hindi words atur, and which means inquisitive, and utsuk, which means curious. Both these words are used in a bad term in Pali. Another term is olarik. And then you find another word, chakradharino. Chakradharino, Hindi speakers will know that is about Vishnu Bhagwan because he has a chakra in his hand. But here Chakradharino means in Pali, a man who has a chakra caused by his desire. Chakradharino on his head, that is, who is tormented all the time by this grinding wheel. In an article, I have shown why Khagabisan should mean the horn of a rhinoceros and not a rhinoceros. There was a long discussion between me and one scholar of Pali there that he said rhinoceros, Khagabisan should mean only rhinoceros. I say that Khagabisan means the horn of a rhinoceros, not rhinoceros. And I have written a long article on it. There is another problem related to term. For example, yana. Yana is used in two ways. If you understand it, yana also means vehicle. If you translate it as vehicle, that somebody will go on it. But yana means path. If there is a path, then you have to walk on the path yourself. If it is a vehicle, then you can use this vehicle to go somewhere else. There is a great difference between these two words. So I have given so many examples here. Now I cannot read all because the time is up almost. So let me request all of you, if you are seriously interested in translating Pali literature into Hindi, then you have to work your way by reading these articles and thinking yourself. I will request the authorities to give a copy of it to you. I have sent the material. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Angraj Chaudharyji. Right. Um, Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give you a brief introduction about Professor Pradeep P. Gokhaleji from Sanskrit perspective. Professor Pradeep P. Gokhaleji is the former professor of philosophy, Savitribai Phule Pune University. He has worked in the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan University for 6 years as research professor. The books authored by him include Inference and Fallacies Discussed in Ancient Indian Logic in the year 1992, Vadanayaya of Dharmakirti, The Logic of Debate in the year 1993, Hetu Bindu of Dharmakirti, A Point on Probance in the year 1997, Yogatru of Patanjali, A New Introduction to the Buddhist Roots of the Yoga System, released in the year 2020. The books edited by him include Classical Buddhism, Neo-Buddhism, and the Question of Caste, released in the year 2021. Presently, he is an adjunct professor in the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies in Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Pradeep Gokhaleji.
All the venerable, honorable professors on the dais, and professors, scholars, and friends of the dais. While doing a PhD in philosophy at Pune University, I became acquainted with both Sanskritists and modern scholars of Indian philosophy. During my dialogues, I found that they had reservations about each other. Philosophy scholars thought Sanskritists were just philologists and their approach to darshanas was superficial. They do not go deeper into the depth of understanding of Indian philosophy. On the other hand, a senior Sanskritist who was known to me remarked about some Indian philosophy scholars that their research follows the takeoff model. They take some clues from an original text and take off from there. They do not bother about what is meant by the whole text. Thus, the philosophy scholars charged that Sanskritists do not go beyond the primary meaning, and the Sanskritists claimed that the philosophers go beyond the original text without bothering about the primary meaning. Going beyond primary meaning and understanding deeper philosophical meaning is essential. However, such an understanding should have a firm footing in the primary meaning. Translation is the way to give an exposition of the primary meaning of the text. So, about my favorite philosopher Dharmakirti, I felt that to understand what Dharmakirti must have meant in his texts like Vadanyaya and Hetubindu, it is necessary to translate them. So, I conducted an exercise on translating the text. The exercise benefited me in arriving at a more consistent interpretation of Dharmakirti's philosophy and criticizing the rival interpretations which I thought were inconsistent. Translating the Buddhist Sanskrit text into English took a lot of work. Though I felt somewhat confident about my understanding of the content of the Sanskrit text, I knew that my English could have been better. I tried to overcome the limitation of mine with the help of my English knowing friends. However, I faced more severe translation problems which are worth sharing here. In Indian epistemological texts, many words look obvious to traditional minded readers. Still, their complexity is exposed when one tries translating them into a foreign language, like English. As a specimen, let us consider some epistemological terms. Let us start with the terms jnana and pramana. We come across various translations of these terms. For instance, jnana is translated as knowledge, and pramana is translated as means to true knowledge or means to valid knowledge, etc. The problems with these translations are as follows. Jnana is a truth value neutral term in the context of Nyaya and Buddhist epistemology. There can be samyak jnana and mithya jnana. However, knowledge is not a value neutral term, truth value neutral term. There cannot be true and false knowledge or valid and invalid knowledge. So, jnana may better be translated as cognition, or it can be true or which can be true or false. There are many issues about the word pramana. In early Nyaya, the term was sometimes used to mean the means to true cognition and sometimes to mean the resultant true cognition. Gradually, the meaning settled down to an instrumental sense, and the term pramiti or prama was coined, which meant the resultant true cognition. Unlike Nayayikas, Buddhist logicians like Dingnag and Dharmakirti did not use different terms for the means and the result. For them, pramana primarily meant the resultant true cognition, but the word can also mean the means to true cognition. There is no substantial difference between pramana as a means and pramana as a result. Hence, if we identify true cognition with knowledge, the Nyaya view that there are four pramanas would be translated as there are four means to knowledge. On the other hand, the Buddhist view that there are two pramanas would be translated as there are two kinds of knowledge. The resultant true cognition, which Nayayikas call prama and Buddhists call pramana, is generally termed in English as knowledge. However, the word knowledge used in English does not match precisely with the meaning of the word prama or pramana used in Indian epistemology. Generally, the English verbal form I know is used in dispositional sense of knowledge, but in an epistemological context, the words jnana or prama and pramana refer to cognition in an episodic sense and not in the dispositional sense. Another usage of the verb know refers to a propositional form of knowledge. Accordingly, knowledge content is expressible in the form of a proposition. However, this idea does not always match with the Buddhist concept of pramana. For example, pratyaksha pramana, according to Buddhists, has a content, namely swalakshana, which, being non-conceptual, cannot be expressed in the form of a proposition. The point is that there is a considerable gap between the Indian epistemological terms prama and pramana on the one hand and the Western term knowledge on the other hand. Hence, translating the two terms as knowledge will be just an approximation. There is a similar problem with translating the terms pratyaksha and anumana as perception and inference. In common parlance, we believe we know things, their qualities and motions through perception. This idea of perception is suitable to the Nyaya conception of Laukika Pratyaksha. However, it is not suitable for the Buddhist conception of Pratyaksha. In ordinary perception, there are two elements. One is the one is the sensory intuition, which involves no concepts or categories. According to Dignaga Dharmakirti epistemology, only the first stage can be called Pratyaksha or Pratyaksha Pramana. The second stage, which involves conceptualization, is not regarded as Pratyaksha by them. Hence, it is difficult to say that the Buddhist epistemologists accept perception as Pramana in the sense that Naiyayikas do so. There is a similar problem with Anumana Pramana also. Due to time constraint, I will not go into details. I just want to point out that there is a semantic gap between Anumana as Dharmakirti understood it and inference as Western logic understands it. In this way, the translations of the Buddhist epistemological terms Pramana, Pratyaksha, and Anumana as knowledge, perception, and inference are all inexact. We face a dilemma here. Since the original terms do not have the exact parallels in the target language, we have two options. One option is keeping the original terms in the translation as they are. Such a translation fails to convey the intended meaning of the original text. The translations of the Buddhist Sanskrit texts in Indian languages generally follow this practice. By reading such a translation, we only have an illusion that we have understood the original text by reading the translation, but actually we do not understand the meaning of the text. The other option while translating the text in a foreign language is to use approximate parallels in the absence of the exact parallels. This option can mislead the readers, so both alternatives are problematic. The second option is a lesser evil because it at least takes us nearer to the intended meaning, though it does not capture the exact meaning. In such a case, to minimize the misleading character of the approximate translation, I propose that such a translation should be accompanied by clarifications and explanatory notes wherever possible. Here I have discussed a very small sample of Buddhist Sanskrit terms that are also at the core of Mahayana Buddhist literature as a whole. One can identify many such terms and discuss their possible translations in detail. Due to time constraints, I will avoid discussing this point. Toward the end of this talk, I would like to mention two issues that are very relevant to the question of translation in general and the translation of Mahayana Sanskrit literature in particular. One issue is this: what is primary and what is secondary in the translation of a text? Word meaning or sentence meaning? The second issue is how is Nitartha Neyartha distinction relevant to the translation of a Sanskrit Buddhist text? Issue 1. Primacy of word meaning or sentence meaning. In Purva Mimamsa school of Indian philosophy, we come across two theories regarding how the meaning of a sentence is known. According to one theory, a word does not convey its meaning individually, it conveys it only in the context of other words. That is, the sentential meaning is primary and word meaning is secondary. This theory is called Anvitavidhanavada and was introduced by Prabhakar. This was a response to Kumarila's theory about Abhihitanvayavad, which was called Abhihitanvayavad, according to which we know word meaning one after the other while understanding the sentence meaning. Then they are put in order in the form of sentence meaning. These two theories of comprehension of meaning refer to two policies of translation. One is word by word translation and the other is a sentence oriented translation. We also find such different styles in the translations of Buddhist Sanskrit literature. Though I don't know either Tibetan or Chinese, when I happen to read some Mahayana Sanskrit texts with some Tibetan and Chinese experts, I was given the impression that Tibetan translations of the Buddhist Sanskrit texts are word oriented, whereas Chinese translations are sentence oriented. Of course, these claims cannot be absolute. Even in a word oriented translation, one has to consider sentence and context. Similarly, a sentence oriented translation is impossible without considering word meanings. I hope the experts present at the conference will throw some light on this issue. Now, issue number 2, Nitartha Nayartha distinction. It is well known that Mahayanists try to maintain internal consistency in Buddha's diverse teachings by referring to the distinction between Nitartha and Nayartha teachings. According to this distinction, Nitartha teachings are supposed to be taken as meaningful and true as they are. Teachings of the Mahayana type are Nitartha in this sense. But teachings of the Śrāvakayāna type are supposed to be derivatively meaningful. They are not to be followed as they are. Hence, two aspects of the Nayartha teachings are relevant. One, they are not to be taken at surface level, but are to be interpreted differently. And two, the Buddha has had a particular intention, abhipraya, behind the Nayartha teachings, namely elevating the spiritual level of the disciples who cannot understand the higher teachings. Let us see, for example, what Vasubandhu in Vimshatika says about Rupayatana, visual object as a sense door. Rupadhyayatana astitvam tad vineya janam prati abhipraya vashaduktam upapaduka sattvavat. Vasubandhu means that when the Buddha said that there are beings born without a father and mother, that is upapaduka sattva, he did not mean that there are such beings. He meant that there is a continuity of consciousness series even in the future. Chitta santati anuchedam ayatyam abhipretya. Similarly, when he said that there is a visual object as the sense door, he did not mean that the visual object is a material object. He meant that visual consciousness arises from its seed, that is swabija, and visual form appears. So the seed consciousness and the object consciousness and the object appearance are called the two doors of consciousness. His intention behind the assertion of Rupayatana was not to assert the existence of the visual object, but to deny the existence of the soul. That is, to assert Pudgala Nairatmya. I think a Sarvāstivādian would interpret such statements as actually implying the existence of beings, that is, collections of five aggregates without a father and mother, and existence of visual objects as insentient objects existing independently of consciousness. Of course, a Sarvāstivādian would agree that while asserting that there is the sense door called Rupa, the Buddha did not mean to accept any soul substance, rather, he meant to deny it. The point is that here we come across three layers of meaning, insofar as the so called Nayartha statements are concerned. First is the layer of literal meaning. Second is the layer of interpretation, that is, when the statement is regarded as Nayartha, that is derivatively meaningful in a particular sectarian context, the derivative meaning of the statement will be the second layer of interpretation. And the third layer is that of intention. What was the more profound meaning intended by the speaker, that is the Buddha, behind making such a statement? It formed the third layer. My suggestion here is that while translating Buddha Vachana, particularly which is treated as Nayartha, in a particular context, we should keep the three layers as separate as far as possible so that the text will be more open for further deliberations. So far, I have just shared some of my observations and puzzlements regarding the translation of Buddhist Sanskrit texts with you. I do not claim any expertise in this field. I am in fact humbled by the honor you have conferred on me by asking me to give a keynote speech. I rather look forward to benefiting from the expert presentations and expert comments that will follow in the proceedings of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Pradeep Gokhleji, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom on the very topic translating Sanskrit Buddhist literature and some issues. Now, without any further delay, I would like to conclude this inaugural session, and I would also like to thank our chief guests for today's conference, Professor Abhay Kumar Singh Ji, our guest of honor, Venerable Professor Gishing Samdilla, and our keynote speakers, Professor Angraj Chaudhary Ji and Professor Pradeep Gokhale Ji, and last but not the least, our director, Venerable Gishidojit Abdullah, for taking out your valuable time and giving us, all of us, this wonderful opportunity to listen to your wisdom and knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we'll begin the first session of today's conference within 5 minutes. And it will be moderated by my colleague, Ms. Kamasijula. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We'll begin the next session within 5 minutes.